Jonathan Williams recorded in his book Legions of Satan, written in 1781, that General Cornwallis revealed to General Washington that a holy war will now begin on America. And when it is ended, America will supposedly be the citadel of freedom, but her millions will unknowingly be the loyal subjects of the crown. Cornwallis went on to explain what would seem to be a self-contradiction, and he said this, quote, "Your churches will be used to teach the Jews' religion, and in less than 200 years, the whole nation will be working for divine world government. That government that they believe to be divine will be the British Empire. All religions will be permeated with Judaism without even being noticed by the masses, and they will all be under the invisible all-seeing eye of the grand architect of Freemasonry." And indeed, George Washington himself, ladies and gentlemen, was a Freemason, and he gave back through false religion what he had won with his army. This divine world government that Cornwallis spoke of was the religion of the New World Order. Now, the Jewish religion that Cornwallis was talking about is not the religion that most Jews in this world practice, but a new, secular, humanistic view that came out of the Lodge of the Mysteries, promoted under international Zionism and the concept of British Israelism. It is the tenet that the Anglo-Aryan race are the true Israelites, and because of that, their royal family, being descended from the house of David in a direct line and a relationship to Jesus Christ himself, have the divine right to rule. One of the myths that are propounded, and you will see more and more of it, is that Jesus did not die on the cross, but entered into a sexual relationship which may have included marriage with Mary of Magdalene, and founded the Merovingian bloodline of kings which began the European dynasties, and this is passed on in secret from father to son and mother to daughter, even unto this day.
common tongue, it says, one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness find them. This is the One Ring.
All right, so Saturn is the sixth planet. from the sun. And it is also known as Satan. So all the planets, they had their own little, that's why they're all named after false gods. So Saturn itself deals actually with the Satan. And Satan, because of how clever he is, has decided that he'll do little things like the seventh day is the Sabbath. And so he named that day Saturn Day, so that everybody is actually giving this day over to God. They're resting, and then slowly it looks like that they're actually serving Satan, for lack of a better term. So anyway, interesting little things about this. Not only is it the sixth planet, but in the Voyager mission, they noticed that on the North Pole there happened to be this interesting hexagon, and they have no idea why that's there. But over the years, people that worshipped Saturn worshipped essentially the hex. So when you talk about putting a hex on somebody, that's where this comes from. Not only that, but it also embodies the cube. So on the right here, we see this is actually a cube on its side, facing you. So that is, the cube has 6 sides, 6 planet. The number of man is 6, 666, etc., and so forth. And so that's how all this really starts to tie in, even down to little things like what is they've changed Jesus' birthday to be December 25th. What was December 25th? Saturnalia, where they would worship Saturn and do orgies and all kinds of crazy stuff, rivers or rolls. It was like their favorite holiday. But yeah, this all goes back to, you have one true God, and then you have Satan and his many different false gods. Doesn't care which one you pick, just pick one of them. Just don't follow the truth. Interestingly, if you take a cube and you unravel it, you can actually have a cross. And there was actually, once you start to study the occult, there was a lot more going on. We see the God side of it, but on the occult side of it, the cube being unfolded represented the cross, and Satan was doing this to gain power over God by having him crucified on a cross. So interestingly, that whole plan backfired. As if you read ahead, we win. And you'll see a little bit more why this was so important, because you can't go anywhere without getting away from Saturn worship. So as I said, it's embodied by the cube. So here are cubes, black cubes, that are actually all over the world. These are just a few. I think this one's in Santa Ana, California, and some of these, I guess that one's in Denmark, or at least the website. But anyway, the black cube represents Saturn. Even the ancients, the original sun worship went to the black sun, or Saturn, and there is some speculation that Saturn may have glowed at one point or something like that. I don't know about all that. There's really no way for us to prove any of this stuff, but it's interesting that they knew certain things, like that Saturn had rings, when those weren't discovered until we started getting telescope technology. So Saturn is known as the Lord of the Rings, where we get certain traditions such as, say, a wedding band, the Lord of the Rings. But also religions themselves worship the black cube. So here's a picture of actually the 2 other religions out there, where we have Islam and their black cube. This is actually mentioned in Acts chapter 18 or 13, where it talks about Artemis and her stone that fell from heaven. All comes back and wraps up into the worship of Saturn. And of course, there's I think a Bible verse that says to have God's word on your head, and so they have these little black boxes they put on there. And so but it's all little things to worship essentially Saturn. And we even see this in our corporations, where our logos and stuff embody Saturn itself, whether it's the rings that they're kind of throwing in the logo, like in the Nike swoosh or whatnot, or if it's the whole thing. Target, this is Saturn from above, or the black cube that you see. These are just a few. I couldn't find as many as I wanted, but the cube itself represents Saturn. Okay, so interestingly, one way that if you read the story about Elijah, there was a Phoenician queen named Jezebel. Jezebel brought in the worship of Asheroth and Baal. So you'll hear me talk about Baal worship constantly, because it really comes down to either you're worshiping Yeshua or you're worshiping Baal. But when we're dealing with this, it's like, how could you just bring in all this worship? And it really came down to people were just simply deceived. After all, God, his name is one of his titles is Elohim. And so there was a pagan god named El. And the pagan god El had Asheroth and Baal, making a little unholy trinity, if you will. There's always these counterfeits that Satan does. So when you do word studies, you see that we have the god of El, where we get the, Elit, or elect. It means rising up. It means power. So we're going to elect a new president, or we're going to get on an elevator and be taken up, or an elder in a church. Even the word electricity, where we get power from. Bethel was a good example of how it just seemed like this is the same God, because Bethel means house of God. So anyway, you should definitely look into words. Sometimes the words that we use are not the words that you think that we're actually using. And I'll give you a couple more examples towards the end of this video. But when we deal with the cube and we deal with the hexagon and all this stuff, you'll see this actually creeping into churches. There's a local church here that went to a external pagan marketing company to rebrand themselves. And of course, how did they rebrand them? Well, their name was Cornerstone Church. So of course they had to give them something that was more of a stone-like thing, but they have no idea that here they are with the cube, and of course the hexagon right behind it, just out of just complete, and this is a big, rich Laodicean church. This is a church I actually went to and filled out the Connect card and figured maybe somebody would call me and I could talk about Revelation 12, but neither here nor there. Oh, goody. I have mail. Sorry. But let's move on, shall we? So once you start to realize that all the symbolisms, you start to see, when you graduate from college, that's why you wear a black robe and you wear this funny little hat. And that hat is actually the capstone of the cube. It's a square. And so this actually goes back to the cult of Saturn, which we actually got out of the Catholic Church. But, I was sitting there with a friend, and she's against churches and everything. And I said, we're in a church service. I said, we're wearing robes. They're speaking Latin up there. I graduated with honors, so you had, all the rights, titles, and privileges. If you ever read your diploma, it's very Catholic. And of course, judges early on in this country did not wear black robes. They wear them now because it's a symbol of power, and it goes back to the cult of Saturn. But even if we look at some of this other stuff that's going on, like you've got the Pope here wearing, that's his Saturn hat. And then, of course, these robes looks very similar to the church service of a college graduation. So I know some people have heard me say that my wife is a heathen, and I'm going to point out one of the reasons why. And I've told her about this, and it's just chipping away day by day, because she was raised in the world 45 years, and it hasn't been till recently that she actually started believing that there was a God. But if we take a look, here she is in her Baal worship, Saturn worship robes. She's a priest. So don't let college fool you. College is the way that the Catholic Church controlled the information during the Reformation standpoint, and that's why we do everything. You hear the College of the Cardinals. Here's the colleges of this, whether it be science or whatnot, it doesn't matter. But again, we were wearing the black robes, and we're wearing the capstone of Saturn itself. Hosea 4, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will reject you from being a priest for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I will also will forget your children.
important topic with you all about Christmas and its satanic and Saturnian or Saturn connections. So first of all, let's begin by truly understanding that December 25th is not actually Jesus Christ's birthday, and that the Bible does not even mention December 25th at all. The elites are simply using December 25th as a day to spread the worship of Saturn throughout the whole wide world. I mean, it is the elites who run this world today anyway. So in fact, we have all unknowingly participated in Saturn worship for thousands and thousands of years. This Saturnian cult has never ever stopped, and its rites are still present to this very day. Saturn is now dubbed as the Lord of the Rings, and it is the reason why we exchange rings at weddings or put halos on the heads of godly people, for example. So let's cut to the chase and hop on into it from the very, very beginning. Since ancient times, sages gazed at the stars and the planets while admiring their heavenly glow and attributing to them godly powers. This is exactly why we see so many connotations in ancient times linking planets to gods. For example, we have the planet Neptune linked to the god Poseidon, Venus linked to Aphrodite, Mars linked to Ares, Saturn linked to Cronus, and etc. Again and again, the ancients asserted a claim that could only appear maddening and preposterous to us in our modern times. But the ancient people declared that the distant planets and stars were the gods of their times. And today, we're specifically going to be talking about Saturn. So the ancients claimed that Saturn is so active in the cosmos that it was regarded by all of mankind as the supreme god and the creator, who is also known as El. And astronomers estimated that the planet Saturn exerted the greatest influence upon all the movements of the celestial bodies in our solar system. And in the very beginning, Saturn ejected filaments in all directions, and that the solar system became illuminated as if by hundreds and hundreds of suns. Hence, why the ancients also worshipped Saturn, or El, as the very first sun. And as strange as it may seem, as difficult as it may be to comprehend, the ancient sun god is not the body we call sun today. In fact, early astronomical traditions identify this first sun, or best sun, as the planet Saturn. In fact, Saturn is esoterically associated with a man's limitations, restrictions, death, and decay. Saturn has also throughout the ages collected various names from different parts of the world and in different languages. But in essence, the ancients have all been worshipping the same deity unknowingly. So if you take a look here at this picture, you could see that the god of Saturn is always and always represented by a very, very old man with a long beard, a sickle, and an hourglass throughout most ancient religions. and Saturn has always also been considered the god of all gods and the most powerful deity no matter which civilizations we look at. Guys, Saturn is L, and this is very important to note. What makes Saturn's identity stand out that much more is the degree to which one nation after another repeated this same L-Saturn connection. So we could see that the Romans called him Saturnus, the pagans called him Pan, while popular Greek traditions identified Saturn as Kronos, the god of all Greek gods, who ruled over the North Pole, had a bad habit of eating all of his children, and who was also the ruler of time. Time being the main factor inevitably leading to the death of us mortals. You could also say that this is where the legend of All-Father Time came from, and that traditional representations of the Grim Reaper originate from the attributes of the same god of Saturn as well. So we could clearly state, before the great flood of Noah, during ancient times, Saturn was regarded by all of mankind as the supreme god and the ruler of all kings. And all occult researchers affirm that Saturn ruled the king of Atlantis and became the divine ancestor of all early patriarchs and kings. The cult has been perpetuated through numerous gods during antiquity and even to this very day. So, if you think about it, all of these great empires that were worshipping the Saturnian sun gods, from Atlantis to Babylon to Egypt to Greece and Rome and etc., you will notice a very, very significant trend and pattern. That all of these empires have either fallen or been destroyed. Guys, Saturn worship is a major link to Satan worship. Why else would these great and ancient empires have all been destroyed? In fact, all Semitic civilizations referred to the god Saturn as El, and Saturn is represented by a black cube. The Saturnian supreme deity ruled over the North Pole of Saturn in all civilizations. And as you could see here, the North Pole of Saturn is in a shape of a hexagon, which gives us a 3D cube. And when we look at the South Pole from a bird's eye view, we could clearly see an eye. Therefore, that is where we get the ancient term, the all-seeing eye. And the all-seeing eye is the symbol of the omniscience of the sun god Saturn, Lucifer, and many, many more false gods. The eye is actually one of the oldest and most widespread symbols that is degrading God. So let's focus now on how Saturn is represented by this black cube. And we can find many instances of this black cube across the whole world. From the Santa Ana Science Museum, to the Israeli flag, to the black cube of Mecca in Saudi Arabia, to the Kabbalistic tree of life, to everyday company logos, and to everything else in between and under the sun. Now, let's get to a very important and one of the most eye-opening connections of this whole video, which has to do with Jesus Christ and Christmas. So here you could see on this picture that the cube actually opens up into a cruciform or a cross shape to reveal hidden symbology. And this is very important to note, my brothers and sisters. As we all know, Jesus Christ was crucified on the cross by the Romans themselves. And of course, with the help of the Jewish church. And they all worshipped Saturn back at the time. The Jewish church and the Romans both. And by them crucifying Jesus on the cross, they were all mocking our true God for destroying their ancient civilizations who worshipped Saturn. A crucial thing to notice as well is how quickly the Roman Empire fell after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. And this alone, guys, points to Jesus Christ being the truth and the way. The pagan god of Saturn is in fact Satan in disguise. The more and more I do research, the more and more I study ancient gods, I realize that our God, Jesus Christ, is the only way. He's the only true God. Now, let's take a closer inspection at Christmas, or what the elite called Jesus Christ's birthday, which is also a great mockery onto our Lord and a great deception to get the masses to worship Saturn. As you might remember, I told you in the very beginning of this video that December 25th is not Jesus Christ's actual birthday. So then you might be asking yourself, then why do we even celebrate Christmas on December 25th? Where did this come from? Well, Christmas actually stemmed from the Roman pagan festival called Saturnalia. Saturnalia, or the worship of Saturn, actually became one of the most popular Roman festivals of its time. It was marked by mischief and the reversal of social roles and norms, in which the slaves and masters switched places. Saturnalia was introduced around 217 BC to raise citizen morale after a crushing military defeat at the hands of the Carthaginians. And Saturnalia celebrations included a school and a work holiday, the making and giving of small presents, and a special market where people could shop for the holidays. Saturnalia was a time to eat, drink, and be merry. Doesn't that sound all too familiar? It was originally celebrated for a day on December 17th, but as Saturnalia's popularity grew, it became a week-long extravaganza, ending on the 25th of December. And it was continued to be celebrated long and long after Jesus Christ's death. When Emperor Constantine established the Christian religion over the Roman Empire in 336 AD, many Romans did not want to give up Saturnalia, and they simply started celebrating Jesus' birthday on the same day, on December 25th. There is another crucial reason as to why celebrating Jesus' birthday on December 25th is a very occult practice. Astrologically speaking, Capricorn is the astrological sign, and it is in the house when Christmas happens on the 25th of December. If we look at Capricorn, we see that Capricorn is represented by a half-goat deity, and that Capricorn is ruled by planet Saturn. This is a Magnus, and Saturn is also considered the Lord of the Winter. This is another satanic link to Saturn and Christmas. We could take a look at Baphomet and Pan, who are half-goat deities, the pagans and Satan's worship. This is another pagan and elite mockery of our Lord Jesus Christ. And the concept of Satan and Saturn devouring children is seen in many classic works of art with a devilish horned goat. We could also link it to Kronos as well. So as I'm sure many of you know, There is a very well-known folk legend associated with Santa Claus that says that he lives in the far north, in a land of perpetual snow, which is the North Pole. And guys, this is all taken from pagan myths, and this is taken from the Greek Saturn god Kronos, who rules the North Pole of Saturn, who is a very old man with a beard, and who also ate his children. This is just a satanically reversed story. All they did was make Cronus look like a nice guy. They made Cronus into Santa Claus. Cronus was an old man who ate his children and ruled over the North Pole. And now Santa is one who lives in the North Pole, who's very old and likes children and gives them presents. This is satanic reversal propaganda. And this is getting the masses to worship Saturn or Santa Claus instead of Jesus Christ. Guys, you could go so deep into this that if you research it, the links will never stop adding up. And guys, every single Christmas tradition stems from Saturn worship, from mocking and crucifying Jesus Christ on a cube or cross to destroying his birthday. Even though December 25th is not his real birthday, they still try to mock God wherever they see him. Now let's look at some of these occult practices and traditions that we have on Christmas. Brothers and sisters, God hates the worship of Saturn, and this is exactly why he destroyed all the previous Saturn-worshipping civilizations. And the sad part is, today's civilizations have not learned one thing, and they're still worshipping Saturn, who is clearly Satan. This is the elite's way for you to worship Saturn and for you to sin and forget about the true God. This is all here for confusion. And Satan is the father of all lies and the author of all confusion. And this Saturn situation is one of the biggest deceptions to date. This is the lie of all lies, and Saturn and Satan is the father of them.
Well, just the other day, the new trailer for Alice Through the Looking Glass came out. As per usual, it's full of the typical Luciferian propaganda. So let's firstly take a look at the subliminal meaning behind the prospect of Alice in Wonderland.
She will come back home to Wonderland and turn back the hands of time. Darkest hour, before my final rhyme, she will come back home to Wonderland and turn back the hands of time.
Please, we really need you. I'm just here about the portal. Only the chosen one can align the fates and save the 12 lands from the forces of darkness.
When the clock strikes heavy and there's no time for tea, in our darkest hour,
Stop to war, so they say.
Close in the dark, they say.
They say she's the chosen one.
Peculiar place to have a party.
Once you realise that these stories, like Alice in Wonderland, are actually allegories of Luciferian principles, made more digestible to the public by the use of cute fairy tales, do we start to understand more of the language that they're trying to convey. And this is exactly why the Large Hadron Collider at CERN has got an instrument called Alice, because it represents the light going through the tunnel. And it's no different with these movies. And what we're seeing today is a huge increase in this Luciferian propaganda. Alice Through the Looking Glass. Well, through the looking glass means to be on the other side of the mirror, which means in a different realm or a different dimension. So Alice is playing that false Christ figure here, the false light. Let's have a look at the trailer first together, then expose what is being subliminally pushed.
You've been gone too long, Alice. There are matters which might benefit from your attention. Friends cannot be neglected. Hurry.
when the day becomes the night and the sky becomes the sea, when the clock strikes heavy and there's no time for tea, and in our darkest hour, before my final rhyme, she will come back home to Wonderland and turn back the hands of time.
Time is a he. He is not someone you want as your enemy. Please, sir, the Hatter is in danger.
Young lady, your time is up. This cannot be good.
Hello, Alice.
I present you with a gift.
Even when we start off this trailer, we've got the whole Disney logo, and the Disney logo itself is the river here, which represents the serpent, and this house, palace, at the end of it, this golden palace, so on the head of the serpent there. And it's all about time, because it's ticking away in this logo, Disney 666 in the logo, and so we're already introduced to it being about time. We have the chiming of the bell tolls, and we see this girl, which is playing that character I've been speaking of,
Gone too long, Alice.
the false light, following this butterfly. The butterfly represents from the murky to the beautiful, like the rebirth, the rise of the phoenix. And it goes into essentially what is this house. And you're going to see that she performs some kind of fake, false, self-sacrificial thing, which is what the Luciferians believe that Lucifer is.
From your attention.
So it's like following the white rabbit in a way, and it goes through this mirror, which is a portal or a gate. You can see that there's an allusion to water, like the water gate. Friends cannot be neglected. So she's in blue up there, and this Hatter is in red. So it's the two pillars, and it's Lucifer sacrificing itself. And this is like hell, you see here, and she's up in what you would refer to as heaven. So she does it. She goes through the gate. She follows that butterfly, blue butterfly, and takes the plunge. This is exactly what they believe. The Luciferians believe that Lucifer is, self-sacrificial.
Hurry.
It's their version of the Christ. It's the false Christ. So falling down from heaven, much in the same way... What are those squares? That's weird. Much in the same way as we've seen before, we saw in the Panic at the Disco video where he falls down from heaven. They see that, the Luciferians see that as a self-sacrificial thing. It's all twisted. All about time. So listen to what the narrator says now.
Becomes the night.
So when the day becomes the night, it's all everything turning upside down. Black becomes white.
And the sky becomes the sea.
And the sky becomes the sea. So turning everything upside down, swapping darkness for light. We've seen it time and time again, where the weather goes mad and we see everything being turned upside down. And that's what he's saying here, when the day becomes night, when the sky becomes the sea, turning everything upside down. Look at Lucifer there, approaching what is a representation of the Tower of Babel, I believe. It's all biblical, but this is their twisted version of it. So the Tower of Babel, the Stargate, you'll see it's all to do with time and time change affecting time.
And the sky becomes the sea. Then the clock.
So there we've got our representation of the clock. This clock has actually got the same design as Big Ben, some sort of flower, geometrical flower in the centre. And I'm not saying that's necessarily anything to that, but we've seen the time, the smashing of time, their rituals pertaining to it often includes this Big Ben, probably because of the GMT, zero, cracking time. Led Zeppelin did it on their album cover.
Then the clock strikes heavy, and there's no time for tea.
That Last Supper reference, and here she goes through the heart of time. Again, all tying into the heart of the earth, and that cracking through the heart of time.
And in our darkest hour, before my final rhyme, she will come back home to Wonderland and turn back the hands of time.
and turn back the hands of time, which we see them representing so many times. If you've been watching this channel before, the reversing of time, possibly to a pre-flood. I don't know exactly what they mean by that, but these are all rituals to do with trying to reverse the prison that they are stuck in. You've got to take some of these things with a pinch of salt because they're not all explicitly biblical, but certainly their belief is that these entities are trapped in Saturn, and it's all to do with breaking time and cracking them out. Of course, CERN as well, and all of that.
Of time.
Time. He is not someone you want as your enemy.
So time is a he, again, demonising the masculine side. And this is likely a reference to Saturn there, because it goes the Tower of Babel, Stargate, time change, and then what do we get? We get the single eye symbolism. So there's probably a reference to that. He is not someone you want as your enemy.
Young lady.
Looks like 1,000 points of light, all Luciferian.
This cannot be good.
The heart of the earth there, you see that? It all ties into the heart of time, the heart of the earth, and cracking them out through a portal. You see there how this is all tying into the same thing. The changing of time, the Luciferian belief system, Lucifer cracking out the false light, cracking them out of the heart of the earth, and all of that.
I present you with a gift.
This is rather sick, actually, because I'm sure some of you can see what that represents right there, the king being beheaded. So this is very blasphemous, and it's also probably a reference to the king's children, for example, the propaganda surrounding Christians. And also in the book of Revelation, it tells us that Christians in the end times will be persecuted in like manner.
Prince William has been inducted into an ancient order of British Knights in a ceremony at Windsor Castle. He's now a Knight of the Garter, all part of his steady elevation in rank as second in line to the throne.
This was a royal coming of age for the young man who will one day be king.
Well, Prince William is walking slightly ahead of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. They are bringing up the rear of that procession there. Prince William emerging for the very first time in his garter robes, having been invested at midday today as the 1,000th Knight of the Garter. It's a bizarre sight, really, isn't it?
But also, she was about to go into campaigning on behalf of Palestinians. Now, you can imagine someone of Princess Diana's profile doing that. They would not have tolerated it. They could not have dealt with that. So I think that's why she was taken out.
By serving some higher purpose than ourselves. A shining purpose. The illumination of 1,000 points of light.
I mean, this is what men have dreamed about for the ages, bringing the world together as one, united and as one in peace, so that we can have prosperity and happiness and joy. And that is precisely what this hidden covenant is all about. It's about that message. And we're all going to become Israel. We all become spiritual Jews, the whole world. And yet we see all of this hatred against the Jews today. But we're all going to become spiritual Jews, everybody that's obedient to God. Wonder what is behind that anti-Jew hostility.
guess a different kind of enemy.
And in Copenhagen, Denmark is Nick Pope. For 21 years, Nick was a government official for the British Ministry of Defense. From 91 to 94, he ran the British government's UFO project at the Ministry of Defense, where he researched and investigated the UFO phenomenon for the British government. Do you believe there is extraterrestrial life?
Okay, well, we're going over the Drake equation, a simple formula designed to estimate the number of intelligent civilizations in the universe that are trying to get in touch.
That looks exactly to me like the good old black sun, okay, the same old, and we were looking at this yesterday, and I showed you how they actually refer to these as dark stars, okay? That is a literal alternative term for these because of the mass of 1,000,000 times our sun that is in the center of this. So they claim, okay? This is what they tell us, okay? So they reveal this first picture of it, and it looks just strikingly like a black sun, because that's really what it is. And I just want to show you, it's like, how do you ignore these things when they're doing it right in front of your face? Now, I showed you about Enoch and the courses of the luminaries yesterday, and you need to understand that there is a dark side to everything, all right? And this is real stuff, and it's common, information that you can get, but people are just unaware of the power of this and what it really means. This Enochian magic was the work of a couple of guys named John Dee and Edward Kelly. And it was also picked up by the likes of Aleister Crowley. Let's see, all kinds of interesting names in here that have picked up on this. But John Dee and Edward Kelly were the fathers of it. And those guys were the early astronomers. These were the ones who set the pace for modern science, okay, through alchemy and through sigils that they would conjure these spirits and garner the knowledge. This is just simply how it works. It is a spiritual war, and they use these sigils of various kinds to bring in these various spirits and gain the knowledge, but they have to give up things in the end, namely their soul. And this is what they do. The scrying, the black magic rituals, it's all very common. It's alive and well today, except now they call these people NASA and Space Israel. Okay, that's the only difference between then and now. It's gotten a little more sophisticated. Okay, now I was showing you also, or did I show you? I can't remember. The pop culture related to this. The black hole sun, the dark star, black hole sun. I mean, if you haven't heard that song, then I don't know where you've been, but this is one of the most popular songs of all time, at least in that genre. But this gentleman, Chris Cornell, who wrote the song, suicided himself in 2017. Okay, Black Hole Sun. Another very famous entertainer who died in 2016, named David Bowie, his last record was called Black Star. Okay, very interesting album cover there. And this is all Enochian magic. That's what it is. And he died at the age of 69, just 2 days after the release of this album. And if you were to look into this, it would make you vomit, because, I mean, there was a video attached to this album of his called Black Star. And if you look at this, man, it is some of the most unbelievably evil, in-your-face, blasphemous garbage that you could ever Watch.
Number 10. First, some context. In Mayan culture, the black sun represents the Osirian butterfly that devours people during the solar eclipse. Also in ancient Egypt, the black sun represents the hidden sun or invisible sun. That is the secret order behind the visible. It means a number of things depending on where in the world you are. And of course it has many meanings. Number 9. The most recent use of the black sun is seen in none other place than the Nazi swastika. Many believe this symbol was co-opted from the 4 Vedas in Hindu religion, but although that may be so, the meaning behind it has nothing to do with Hinduism. It stands for the black sun itself. Number 8. The black sun was brought into Hitler's own iconography from his mentor, Helen Blavatsky, who within her mystic circles used to use the iconography of the black sun itself. But what other evidence is there that the Nazi swastika means the black sun, and it in fact has links directly to the inner occult system of the Nazi party? Well, number 7. The Nazi SS had this in their occult castle, which literally translates to the black sun. This is the true version of what the swastika is. Remember, what is shown in public is only ever the outer symbolism in the occult. The inner symbolism is often hidden from the public. So here you see the actual black sun itself. This black sun you see here on the floor is actually in the tomb where the ashes of fallen SS soldiers were held. So here we have a direct connection between the black sun and occult mysticism to the inner workings of the Nazi party themselves. Number 6. It's worth noting that the SS castle, which was designed by Himmler himself, is actually the shape of a large triangle. This will mean something later, but for now, suffice it to say that the circular pattern at the end of the castle, the largest one, references in fact the black sun. Number 5. In a recent video, I put forward the research by clinical psychologist D.C. Hammond. When he was treating his patients, he found that they were reciting a similar mono-narrative. He found this narrative repeated by victims of the MK Ultra mind control experiment conducted by the CIA. He stated that the program started as part of Operation Paperclip, where Nazi scientists were brought over from Germany after the war. Now these were all very high-ranking Nazis. That is, the academic kind of Nazi that's climbed up the ladder. So it was founded by Nazis, you might say. They were taken to the United States to head mind control programs. So what? What does this have to do with the black sun? Well, it has to do with the black sun because the Nazis that were brought over were high-ranking Nazi insiders. Now, not only did whistleblowers and the victims of these mind control programs say that they were installed with Satanism as an ideology, but in fact a number of people who worked on the program, whistleblowers, said in fact that the Nazi scientists themselves were in fact Satanists, the real type of Satanists, not the type of Satanists that go out and practice Satan to troll people, but the real type of Satanism. So this gives us an inside track into what the black sun actually means in the inner circles of those in high positions of the Nazi party. Number 4. So what about the black sun, you might say? How does it really link to anything? Well, because I think that the same Nazi iconography is in fact used today. The black sun is used at the heights of power, at least within the United States. Number 3. This mural is famous. It's a mural from the Bank of America. Now look at the black sun in the sky. Do you see that large black sun rising? That's right. This is the exact same black sun that is projected in Nazi occult practices. Now I'm not saying this is a hidden Nazi swastika. What I'm saying is it stands for the occult symbol that the Nazi swastika had on the outside. This is in fact a hidden secret symbol behind the front Nazi swastika. But there is more to this artwork than we see on the surface. As with all occult symbolism, something else is hidden. Number 2. What happens if we mirror this artwork? Take a look. We get this. This is on the surface a reference to Masonic symbolism, but it is fundamentally different. Now, of course, there are references here with Masonic symbolism. The checkered floor, for example, the fact that Jacob's ladder is on the left-hand side, the sun and moon on the pillars. But as you can see, even with me repeating this, all those things are fundamentally different. For instance, the checkered floor is not black and white, it's red and white. There's not one sun. In fact, there's no sun. There's only a black sun, and now there's two of them. Jacob's ladder has also been replaced by a staircase. So what does this mean? Well, this means that this is a type of corrupted symbolism from Masonic traditions that's been changed somehow. From what root system it originally came from, I just don't know. But I can say, although it seems like it follows many of the Masonic root systems, such as similar iconography to the Tale of Solomon's Temple, it is actually very different. It almost seems far more ominous. Now note also the large red banner in front of the child, and the fact that this is repeated within Nazi symbolism. Also note, of course, the black sun, which reflects Nazi symbolism. But what I want you to really focus on for this, because it's going to connect onto our next bit of information, is the prism. Now, I'm well aware that the cube itself is a fundamental component of Masonic tradition. However, this I don't think is a cube. I think it has a completely different meaning, is in fact a type of prism or glass box. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, number one, the strangest airport in the world is none other than Denver Airport. And I know a lot of you are aware of Denver Airport, but just bear with me a moment and see how this connects. Denver Airport is really at the heart of a lot of conspiracy theories, since it went billions of dollars over budget and has what can only be described as one of the horsemen of the apocalypse, minus its rider standing out front. It has long been rumored to be a massive underground bunker of some kind that is under the airport, a type of hideaway for the elites. There is a plaque at the front that states it's a gift from the New World Airport Commission, of all things. But in order to reference the prior, we're going to have to look at the murals. These are the very strange murals that were in Denver Airport. They depict a cataclysmic event in the future, at which point many people die. Then there is a period of, I guess, rebirth after the disaster. But I want you to look at the glass prisms. They feature repeatedly, that is around animals and other things, as noted prior in the Bank of America mural. But what connections are there with the Bank of America mural really, apart from this being a very ominous mural in the Denver Airport, and of course the Mayan symbolism here, which also note the black sun reference, because the black sun is a part of every Mayan tradition. Well, there's this. There's the black sun itself, which is on the floor of the airport, a huge black sun inlaid into the floor of the airport itself, and you can even see the rotations of the different planets around the black sun. If you look closely, you can even see the slight glow of yellow light around the black sun. That is the halo. This is because this is the black sun that's eclipsing the actual sun. So okay, you might say, there's a black sun and it says New World Order, and there's some other strange things, and the airport itself kinda looks like a SWAT sticker. Also note this black sun, which is inlaid into the bottom of the Hoover Dam. So these three examples are just a few examples really of what's out there. I guess my overarching theory is that the black sun is closely related to Satanism and a type of corrupted form of Freemasonry. There definitely seems to be something very strange happening here. Something weird that has a Nazi connection to World War II and Satanism. So what's going on? These are the symbols of a very powerful organization, a group that's so powerful that they can put their iconography all around an airport that costs billions of dollars. They've got it in the Hoover Dam, they've got it in the Bank of America, and I would guess there's many places where they've got this type of symbolism, which proves that they have a strong hold and position in power. But at the end of the day, guys, we'll just have to decide for yourselves what to believe. I am, of course, just bringing the breadcrumbs I find, trying to connect the dots.
The wheels within wheels with eyes all around. Would you like to see the eyes and the wheels all around and the eyes all over the wheels? I'll show you those eyes. Here are the wheels with the eyes. The stars, the hosts of heaven, God's creation, the ones, each star has its name, as it says in the scripture. God says, I have named them all. These are the eyes. These are the eyes on the wheels. Our stars. I just can't help but to quote from Isaiah 40:26. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might, for that he is strong in power, not one faileth. This is what people have been missing this whole time, and it's been right in front of our faces in the scripture. This is what God was showing Ezekiel. The wheels within the wheels are the belts that surround Earth. NASA calls them the Van Allen belts. These are the invisible belts of magnetic energy within the torus. They keep everything in motion, everything moving like a fine-tuned clock. All the eyes that Ezekiel saw was the stars. All the stars are created by God. They are the luminaries. That is what makes up all the eyes that is being spoken of. What Ezekiel saw was the absolute pure beauty of our home that God created for us. This is what Satan wants you blinded to. This is the absolute magnificence that Satan doesn't want you to see. This is why they mockingly show you that image in Game of Thrones and other movies, the wheels within the wheels over the flat plain earth. They're showing you the truth right in front of your face, and they laugh because you don't understand and you don't see. This is the beauty. This is the sheer absolute beauty of the world that God created, and he called it good. Now that you have eyes to see and ears to hear, now let me tell you this. These wheels that we see, these bands that move like a clock, this is how the sun and the moon do what they do. This explains their movements. It's all about magnetic energy. It's all about the magnetic fields. This is how they're frictionless and how they move in perfect unison. And just as it states in the book of Enoch, through the movement of these wheels, we see how the sun and moon will go through their vaults and rise and return in different areas. This is what the globe has blinded people to, the absolute truth of what God said all along. It has been here the whole time in the scriptures. Instead, we choose to listen to NASA. Instead, we choose to listen to the idiot box. Instead, we choose to listen to scientists, and we heap amongst ourselves teachers that teach us absolute lies to keep us in the dark. When God's been saying the whole time, just look up. Look up at what surrounds you. I made this for you. That's all God wanted to say. Just take a look. I'm here. I am right above you. You can take comfort knowing that when you step outside and gaze up into that starry wonder of God's creation, just know that our Father in heaven is sitting up there right now, staring down at all of us, watching our every move. He knows everything that's going on down here. He has not missed anything. And just know and be comforted by the fact that our Father is right there, and he's been there this whole time. This is something that the world and NASA and the scientists can never take from us, ever. Even the lying powers and signs of Satan that are coming, the lies of the fallen angels and the lies of the world that are going to be ever increasing, will still not rob this from my heart, and they will never rob from me my faith in Jesus Christ, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Hello, it's me. You know, indoctrination started while we were still naive, programming our beliefs. And that inertia is the reason we don't feel the earth spinning. Hello, can you hear me? Did you ever stop to question the confession of gravity as a theory? Funny thing, force alone can be explained with buoyancy and density. The sun is closer than what they've told us, not 90 million miles away. Hello from the inside, I'm here to tell you not to lie. And there never was a space probe, and those planets you've left so wandering stars. Operation Did you get a chance to join Flight Earth and Globe discussion group to discover all the truth? How the sun, the moon, the stars are all revolving around you. There's no more secret. The earth is stationary.